In a world full of titans, mankind has teamed up with these creatures to create the greatest sport of all time, monster wrestling. This competition that has existed for thousands of years has become a world championship, and the best fighters become great icons in their cities. It was in the town of Stoker that the greatest monster wrestling team of all time emerged. The duo consisted of Rayburn, the champion, and Jimbo Coyle, his coach. They received the big gold belt 9 times in a row and became the sport's greatest legends. However, their career ended prematurely when they suffered an accident. The duo was on their way to a championship when the ship carrying them sank and they were lost at sea. After that, for a long time, Stoker lived in a hopeless limbo, but now the town dares to dream again, because Jimbo's partner, Siggy Marlin, has found a promising monster called the Tentacular. That night, the creature will perform in the stadium built by Jimbo Coyle, where it intends to claim the biggest prize for monster wrestling, the Big Belt. Winnie Coyle is Jimbo's only child and walks toward the stadium along with all the other residents. On that day, everyone is getting ready to watch the fight that will bring back the prestige of the city. Before entering, the girl looks at the statue of her father and says she would very much like to watch the fight next to him. Minutes before the competition begins, the commentator, Mac, prepares to narrate the clash of titans while the public takes the opportunity to buy snacks and souvenirs of the Tentacular. To establish his name in monster wrestling, the Shark will have to defeat the current champion, King George. The announcer announces the arrival of the evening's challenger. Then the English Bulldog enters the arena and splashes his drool all over the audience. The fight begins and Tentacular starts at a disadvantage. Within minutes, he is already losing the fight. Meanwhile, Winnie follows her opponent's every move and notices that the dog licks its snout every time it is about to launch an attack. At that instant, she descends the bleachers and rushes to the ring. The referee announces the end of the first round and Winnie informs the Shark of her discovery. The second round begins, and now Tentacular knows that he needs to pay attention when King George licks his snout, as this is a sign that he is going to attack. With this new strategy, the Shark manages to dodge his opponent's blows and defeat him. At this point, the crowd goes wild, because Tentacular has become the idol of all the residents of that city. Mark Remy is the first to interview the new champion. The monster announces that he is leaving Stoker and will take his talent to Slitherpool. The Shark wants to become a legend, and according to him, this will be impossible if he continues to compete in the stadium that belongs to the greatest legend of all time. As the entire audience laments this news, the monster calls Jimothy to the stage and the boy celebrates his new achievement. After saying goodbye to Stoker's people, Tentacular leaves and Siggy, his trainer, accompanies him to a new destination. Before leaving the stadium, the monster destroys the sign where there is a tribute to Rayburn and Jimbo. The next day, the whole town is devastated and the residents are in a rage, destroying everything they have made to honor Tentacular, who is now considered a traitor. Of all the fans, the most outraged is the guy who has tattooed tentacles all over his body. The mayor tries to calm the population, but needs to reveal the truth. He says that things are much worse than the residents realize, and the councilwoman explains why. The woman reveals that it takes a lot of money to keep the stadium running and monster fights are Stoker's biggest source of income. So, now that Tentacular is gone, the town will go bankrupt. To solve this problem, the mayor decided to sell the stadium to Jimothy, who offered a lot of money for the land. When all the papers are signed, the businessman will destroy the stadium to build a parking lot. This causes great anger among the townspeople, especially Winnie and her mother. That stadium was the fruit of Jimbo's hard work, and it will be very hard for his family to see the place being destroyed. Later, the girl goes to visit the stadium and, while observing the grandiosity of that place, she remembers the happy times she had with her father and Rayburn when she was still a child. At that moment, the young woman remembers that she has been keeping her father's notebook. There, Jimbo wrote down all the strategies he used to make Rayburn win the 9 championships. Winnie picks up her backpack and informs her mother that she is going to Pittsmore, in search of a new champion for Stoker. A few hours later, the girl arrives in town and heads to an underground arena in search of monsters. When she gets there, she finds Axehammer beating the crap out of her opponent, and the poor monster can't even dodge the attacks. After throwing it away, Axehammer declares his victory. When the creature is resting in the locker room, Winnie goes after it and tries to convince it to go to Stoker. However, when the young woman reveals that she will be his trainer, the monster begins to mock her and then refuses the invitation. Winnie then tries to make the same proposal to other monsters, but they all mock the girl because they don't believe in her ability to be a trainer. Hours later, the young woman is already frustrated and hopeless. She goes to the bar for a soda and meets a young man who has bet all his money on the fight that is going on at that moment. If the monster with a pair of horns wins the fight, the boy will be rich, but apparently it is the blue boar who has the upper hand. As the two monsters fight each other, Winnie notices the resemblance of one of them to the little monster she knew in her childhood. Rayburn also left a son when he disappeared, and his fighting style was the same as that of the guy who was in the ring at that moment. Even before the fight started, the duo had already decided that the boar would come out victorious from that duel, because that was the order from the owner of that arena. However, Winnie decides to approach Steve before the battle is over. In an attempt to get rid of her, the creature accidentally strikes Clonk and is victorious. Steve tries to get him up, but when the referee announces his victory, the gates open and a demonic bird comes out from inside. Lady Mayhem is furious that the guy who bet on Steve's victory has just won $100,000, all because the little monster didn't follow her orders. The creature claims that it wants to get its money back, and then Winnie shows up. When the bird leaves, the girl claims to be happy to see Steve again and invites him to go fight at Stoker's. Steve left town because he didn't want to become famous at his father's expense, he wanted to make a name for himself. However, since this is the only way to get the money to pay Lady Mayhem, he agrees to go fight at Stoker's Stadium. The little monster walks toward town and gives Winnie a lift, and Winnie takes a nap on the way. When they arrive at the training room, Steve is surprised to realize that everything remains the same, and for a few seconds he remembers the good times he had there with his father. Before leaving, Winnie advises Steve to rest, because the next day they will begin training. At 5 a.m., the alarm clock goes off and the girl is getting ready for her first day as a trainer. The young girl is apprehensive, but her mother manages to reassure her. The woman hands Winnie a key so she can use her father's old vehicle. The girl crosses the entire city on her floating motorcycle and arrives, at 6 in the morning, at the training room. She wakes up Steve, who was asleep in the ring, but the monster refuses to go training and asks the young woman to schedule a fight that he will take care of the rest. That same week, Winnie meets a challenger. Ramarilla is a giant and extremely strong gorilla. The trainer tries to go over a combat strategy for Steve, but he prefers to do things his way. The referee orders the fight to begin, and before he even gets hit by a blow, Steve turns in and pretends to have been knocked out. Furious, Ramarilla jumps headlong onto his opponent, but Steve manages to deflect the attack. The first round comes to an end and the little monster realizes that, for the first time in his life, he is participating in real combat. Winnie informs him that only the winner will receive the prize money. Upon hearing this, Steve agrees to follow the girl's strategy. The trainer notes that Ramarilla is full of muscle, which means that he doesn't have great endurance. So the strategy is for Steve to run a lot to make him tired. Finally, when the gorilla is exhausted, they switch to an offensive strategy. When the second round begins, Steve follows the plan and starts running in circles. Realizing that this will not be enough to tire his opponent, he runs out of the stadium, and when they return to the ring, both are exhausted. They try to continue the fight, but Steve uses his body weight to knock his opponent out and narrowly becomes the winner of that battle. For the first time, the little monster feels the pleasure of victory and realizes that this is much better than being a loser. That week, Steve's fight was in the news as the most disgraceful of all. On the other hand, Tentacular received the title of Best Monster Wrestler after beating his last opponent. After facing his first real fight, Steve realizes he needs training, and Winnie uses her father's notes to turn her monster into a champion. They perform a series of heavy exercises for a week, but the girl does not notice any progress. She is disappointed with Steve's performance and he tells her that is why he left Stoker. Everyone in town wanted the little monster to be just like his father, but he isn't and doesn't want to be. Upon hearing this, Winnie realizes that she is using the wrong method to train him. Those strategies were designed to be applied to Rayburn and not to Steve. If she wants to succeed as a trainer, the young woman will need to find a way to customize all those workouts so that they are effective for her monster. After asking Steve a series of questions, Winnie discovers that he loves to dance. From that day on, the duo uses the monster's dancing skills to practice their footwork during the fight. When he executes what he has learned during his next battle, Steve collects another victory and becomes known for his artistic fighting style. Each day, Winnie faces a new challenge to wake up the little monster and start the training, but in the end, all the effort has been worth it because Steve is showing a great evolution. A few weeks after training began, he will have to face an opponent 3 times his size. According to Winnie, the only way to defeat him is to knock the creature on its belly. After tiring out his opponent, Steve manages to throw him out of the arena, enshrining his 3rd consecutive victory. In this way, they attract media attention and are invited to participate in a TV live interview. Mark asks what the duo's next steps are, and Winnie states that their next fight will be at Stoker Stadium. She asks that monsters from neighboring towns who want to duel against her champion come forward. Upon seeing this interview on TV, Tentacular contacts his new manager. Minutes after appearing on the news, Winnie receives a call from King George's trainer. The man challenges Steve to a duel, but the bulldog refuses to take part in the fight because, after losing to the shark, all his self-confidence has been destroyed. The pair celebrate their progress as they walk towards the training room, but when they get there, they discover that their dream has gone down the drain. The councilwoman reports that Jimothy contacted the mayor hours ago and offered an even higher price for them to sign the purchase and sale contract that very day. The woman directs the girl to go to the Slitherpool Stadium to try to stop the deal. However, by the time the pair manages to get there, it is too late. The mayor has already signed the papers and all that is missing is Jimothy's signature for the sale to be completed. The young woman tells him that Stoker no longer needs the businessman's money, as Steve has a duel scheduled against King George. Just then, Jimothy shows her a report announcing that the Bulldog has quit. From now on, he is no longer part of monster wrestling. As the man signs the contract, Tentacular reveals that the stadium will only be destroyed because he wants it that way. The monster counters that he wants to do this because no matter how many championships he wins, there will always be someone to say that he is not as good a fighter as Rayburn. Therefore, the shark has decided to destroy everything that makes people remember the existence of the champion. Upon hearing this, Steve states that Tentacular has serious problems and the monster becomes enraged. It uses its tentacles to grab Steve's neck and hurls him away. Jimothy records the whole thing and then he and his team leave with the signed contract. That night, Steve goes to talk to Winnie, as he realizes that his trainer is not doing well at all. The young woman asks the monster to return to Pittsmore, as he already has the money to pay Lady Mayhem. However, Steve claims that that town is his home now and tries to stop Winnie from giving up her dream. However, the girl is very shaken and does not listen to her friend. Therefore, Steve's only option is to return to the underground arena from whence he came. After paying his debt, the monster goes to visit him and tells him that he is the new favorite to win the fight that night. The guests bet a lot of money on him and she will keep all the money when Steve loses the duels. Before he goes to the ring, he finds an old photo tucked away in the back of his closet. Steve realizes that he greatly admired his father and wants to be a winner, just like him. That night, the little monster does not show up for the battle. Instead, he returns to Stoker and goes to Winnie's house. When they meet, he reveals that he has spent his entire life running away from what people expected him to be and, because of this, has not been able to explore what he, in fact, could be. However, now Steve knows that even if he is not a great fighter like his father, he does not want to be a loser again. The girl then jumps into her friend's arms and he states that he is there to help her save the stadium. At that moment, all the residents were gathered around the stadium to say goodbye to what, for many years, was the city's greatest pride. Jimothy and Tentacular are booed as they tell of their plans to build a parking lot in that area and the residents throw food scraps at them. The shark sets off the bomb that will destroy the building, but everyone is surprised when Steve shows up with Winnie and tells her that he cut the wires to stop the explosion. The little monster reveals that he is the son of Rayburn, the monster wrestling's greatest fighter, and challenges Tentacular to a duel. If Steve is still alive after 3 rounds, the shark will return the stadium to the residents of Stoker. With his ego bruised, Tentacular accepts the challenge, but before he leaves, he throws the statue of Jimbo Coyle out of town. The fight will take place in a few weeks, and until the big day arrives, Steve needs to train to face the greatest fighter of all time. His goal is not to defeat the shark, but to survive 3 rounds with it. Therefore, Winnie bets on evasive training, in which Steve will learn how to get rid of his enemy's attacks. The training is complete when the monster can get through all the traps and reach Jimbo's statue. To succeed in that duel, Steve must learn to neutralize his opponent's greatest threat, the tentacles. In addition, he will have to dodge his opponent's precise blows and avoid being bitten by those powerful teeth. After training for several days straight, Steve finally manages to meet the challenge of reaching Jimbo's statue, and Winnie declares that he is ready for battle. The big day arrives, and in a few moments the competitors will enter the ring. The audience is euphoric and apprehensive at the same time. The announcer announces the entry of Rayburn's son, and then the arrival of the current grand champion, Tentacular. When he realizes what he is about to do, Steve is terrified, as he realizes that he will never be as good as his father. Then Winnie states that he doesn't need to be like his father and guides his friend to just be himself. The referee allows the fight to begin and Tentacular lands a punch on Steve. The shark celebrates, as if he has already won the fight, but Steve quickly gets up and starts dancing. Tentacular tries to attack him again, but the little monster uses his dance moves to dodge all of his opponent's blows. The first round comes to an end without the shark managing to land a second blow on Steve. If everything continues as it is, this duel is already won. However, Siggy has a card up his sleeve and guides his fighter to use the new moves he has learned in recent weeks. In the second round, Steve is surprised when he realizes that the shark is dancing along with him and uses his tentacles to trap him. After landing several straight blows on Steve, Tentacular grabs his neck and tries to choke him. The gong rings, announcing the end of the second round, but the monster refuses to release his opponent. After the referee's interference, the shark releases his prey and Siggy asks Winnie not to send Steve back to the ring, as Tentacular intends to eliminate him in the next round. Upon hearing this, the young woman prepares to throw in the towel, but Steve tries to stop her. He says that he wants to continue the fight, but now they need to use another strategy. The little monster intends to attack the enemy, for he knows that just dodging his attacks will not be enough to guarantee victory. Winnie then passes a new strategy to his fighter. In the very first seconds, Steve manages to take down the current champion, but is captured by his tentacles. When he manages to break free, Steve gets back in the ring and attacks Tentacular. The shark asks for help from his trainer, as he is completely lost. However, Steve goes at him again, before the fighter has a chance to think of a new strategy. After taking dozens of blows, Tentacular takes the lead and knocks Steve down. The little monster then attaches his opponent's suction cups to the side of the arena and gives him many punches. Finally, Steve jumps on top of his enemy, but the shark manages to distract him and, while knocking his opponent out, the monster hits his head and is knocked unconscious. Now they are both on the canvas, but Tentacular begins to get up. Steve is still passed out and the audience starts clapping in rhythm to wake him up. The plan works and Steve begins to move. Suddenly, he stands up and gathers all his strength to deliver the final blow. The shark tries to get up, but the referee starts the count. In that instant, the unexpected happens and Steve wins the fight. The entire crowd celebrates and Steve receives his well-deserved big gold belt. Siggy goes to congratulate Winnie and says that if her father were there, he would be very proud. Now that Stoker has a new champion and has managed to get the stadium back, all the residents are relieved and unite on stage to dance with Steve.